All right, let's jump right in. For centuries, some of the greatest thinkers have been locked in this huge intellectual showdown. And it's all centered on one single, massive question. A question that really gets to the heart of what reality even is.
Just think about that for a moment. I mean, really think. What is the one foundational thing that everything else, the sun, the earth, the laws of nature, even your own thoughts, what does it all rely on to exist? What's the bedrock of it all?
You know, this isn't just some dusty old debate for a philosophy class. The answer actually shapes how we see everything, from science to our own purpose in the cosmos. And this ultimate, foundational reality, it has a name. Philosophers call it the absolute. So let's be clear on the rules of the game here. The absolute, or hamuchlat in Hebrew, as you can see there, it has to be three things. It has to be foundational, meaning everything else springs from it. It has to be necessary, meaning it has to exist. It's not optional. And it's got to be ultimate. There's nothing bigger or more fundamental. So with that definition in mind, let's bring in the challengers. First up in the ring, we've got the subjective self. This is the idea that maybe, just maybe, the ultimate reality isn't out there somewhere, but right inside your own head. The philosopher Fichte was a big champion of this. The claim is pretty bold. The thinking I, your consciousness, is the absolute. Everything you perceive, the whole universe, is basically a product of your mind. But there's a pretty glaring problem with this idea, which our source material is quick to point out. And here's the problem. If my mind is creating all of reality, how on earth can I learn about geology or astronomy? How can my mind invent a world with a history that stretches back billions of years, long before my mind or any human mind ever existed? It just doesn't add up.
The source text really nails it with this quote. The idea that your mind is making up evidence of a past that happened before you were even here, well, that's called the peak of fantasy and paradox. It's a total contradiction.
And here's the final nail in the coffin for this idea. Think about your own consciousness, your I. It changes constantly, right? You learn things, you forget things, you feel happy, then sad. It's limited. But the absolute, by its very definition, has to be infinite and unchanging. A limited, flickering I just doesn't fit the bill. So challenger number one is down for the count. So if reality isn't all in our heads, let's swing to the complete opposite idea. Maybe the only thing that's truly real is the physical stuff around us, the material world. This brings us to challenger number two, materialism. The materialist playbook is pretty simple. The absolute is the not I. It's the external, physical universe made of matter and energy. This, they say, is the one necessary, indestructible thing. It seems solid, right? I mean, you can touch it. But according to our source, this idea starts to crack once you look a little closer. The author's critique really breaks down into three key points. First, the material world isn't logically necessary. You can totally imagine a universe not existing, and it doesn't create a logical contradiction. Second, it's definitely not unchanging. The universe is defined by constant, violent change. And third, and this is a big one, thought seems to be on a higher level than matter. Your mind can have an idea of the universe, but the universe can't have an idea of your mind. It seems impossible for the greater thing, consciousness, to just emerge from the lesser thing, unthinking matter.
Okay, so if the absolute isn't just the mind, and it's not just matter, what if it's both? What if you combine them? This leads us straight to our third challenger, pantheism.
Great thinkers like Spinoza and Hegel pushed this idea. They said the absolute is the grand unity of everything. Thought and matter, the I and the not I, it's all one giant divine system. The universe is God, and God is the universe. And you have to admit, it's a beautiful, all-encompassing idea. But our author uses this brilliant metaphor to show us the problem. They compare pantheism to that giant statue from the Bible. You know, the one with a head of gold, arms of silver, but down at the bottom, its feet are made of weak, brittle clay. It looks magnificent from a distance, but its foundation is fundamentally flawed. So what are these feet of clay? Well, for starters, if everything is God, then you, me, this planet, every single particle, we'd all have to be our own little absolutes. That's a contradiction.
Then there's the weird idea that the absolute somehow peaks in finite human minds, which just seems absurd given the sheer size of the universe. It also gets causality backward, trying to get a perfect end result out of an imperfect starting point. And maybe the most damaging flaw, if God is always changing, always becoming, then truth itself is never stable. Science just becomes opinion. The whole thing collapses.
Okay, so after systematically knocking down all three major challengers, the author finally steps into the ring to present their own case. And it all begins by looking at one simple word in a completely new way.
That word is infinite. We usually think of it as a negative. In means not, so infinite just means not finite. But the author says, no, flip that around. Think of it as a positive idea. Infinite doesn't mean what something lacks. It describes what it is. It's the complete removal of all limitation. It is the idea of perfection itself. And this brings us to this powerhouse quote from Descartes, which is really the key to the whole argument. He's asking, how do I even know that I'm imperfect? How do I know I doubt things or that I lack knowledge? The only way I can recognize my own flaws is because somehow I already have an idea in my mind of a being that has no flaws, a perfect being. And this leads us to the grand finale, the ontological argument. It goes like this. Imagine the most perfect being possible. By definition, that being has to possess all perfections, right? Well, what's a major perfection? Real existence. A perfect being that existed only in your imagination would be less perfect than one that actually existed in reality. So if you can even conceive of a maximally perfect being, that being must exist. Its existence is a logical requirement of its perfection. So that's where we land with this one last huge question. Is this idea of a perfect, infinite being just something our limited brains cooked up? Or is the very fact that we, in our limited, imperfect state, can even have that thought, is that the ultimate clue? Is that the proof that such a being is real and is the one true absolute that underpins everything? Now that is something to chew on.